This is an extract from the Leader Coronavirus Daily podcast by the Evening Standard and hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for it on your podcast provider.
Fashion is all about being seen. It's about catwalks and photo calls, magazine shoots, publicity stunts. You can't set a trend if no one's looking. And that's a problem for London Fashion Week. How do you hold a massive international event when everyone's stuck indoors? The solution is to go online, but that isn't easy either. The responsibility to make it all work falls on the shoulders of the British Fashion Council, whose CEO, Caroline Rush, spoke to the Evening Standard's digital fashion and beauty editor, Chloe Streets.
First, it'd be great to take a look at a step back and hear about what you think the impact of the pandemic has been on the fashion industry and give us an idea of the damage and the scale of the damage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if we go back to that moment when we went into lockdown, obviously the stores closed, the manufacturers closed and head office closed. What that meant is that the stores, quite a lot of them cancelled orders. So the orders that designers had made were ready to ship. Some of it in works in production essentially were cancelled. That cash flow that comes from that has a significant impact, and particularly businesses that are going through growth is they rely on that money to be able to cover their overheads, to cover their suppliers. So it's had a devastating effect. Is that in terms of numbers, we did a research survey quite early on in terms of predicted impact, and designer businesses thought that they maybe had, 3 months, this was before the government support schemes came into play, that they could survive in terms of cash. A lot of businesses have been able to survive a bit longer, but it's still really challenging. And the support that's coming through government works for a lot of businesses, but it really doesn't work for creative businesses, particularly ones that are going through a growth period. And that's why we've been addressing that with things like raising money through philanthropy, etc.
When you say it doesn't work for creative businesses, what do you mean?
There's quite specific criteria that comes through the government's what are called the COVID business interruption loan, the CBILS, and the bounce back loans. And part of that criteria is based around profitability, is around the amount of money spent in the previous accounting year versus paid up share capital. And for a business that's going through growth is that that just won't reflect in the right way. And for the majority of our businesses, that isn't working. So we continue to have conversations with government. As I said, we're quantifying that at the moment, so we can give them some hard data around what the impact of not supporting these businesses is likely to be, both in terms of business closure, then of course unemployment. You know, our industry's worth 35 billion to the British economy and employs 890,000 people, or it was last year. Trying to imagine what that impact is going to be for 2020 is terrifying.
Of course. And presumably, you know, smaller brands have been impacted, but if we look at luxury versus high street, has it hit high street brands harder, do you think, who rely on their store traffic?
Absolutely. It's this, those that have relied very much on footfall, and particularly in places like London, where there's a huge amount of tourism traffic that comes in, that accounts for the number of people through the door, but also the amount of money spent. That business has just gone away. And of course, a lot of businesses, not all of them, but a lot of businesses are online, and they've been able to do some sales. But equally, while as consumers, we're sat at home, you know, the way people are shopping has changed. You know, the product that's selling is mostly athleisure wear, jeans, t-shirts, etc. It's not the kind of collections that you see on the catwalk at London Fashion Week, and it's not high fashion, it's not event dressing. Is there anyone that had relied on sort of the season business of Ascot and the Serpentine and Fashion Week and Henley and Wimbledon and all of that? You know, June's an amazing time, as well as layering on all of the weddings that seem to happen over this period. That has not happened.
And so looking to the future, we're chatting ahead of the first ever digital London Fashion Week. How has it been to pivot from such an established physical event to something that's, you know, digital only? It must have been one of the most challenging times of your career.
Yes. I mean, challenging for so many reasons. You know, all of the conversation that we've had around how we create support for designer businesses, you know, that being the backdrop of survival of businesses versus how do we continue to have these platforms that can promote and celebrate our businesses, our industry to global audiences, whether it's trade and consumer. And I think is that part of that early dialogue with the designers around the fact that they are going to have product to sell that maybe some of them didn't have previously. The importance of bringing in the consumer even more. I mean, we've been doing that for the past few years at London Fashion Week, but even more as part of the digital conversation is incredibly important. It's going to be incredibly exciting. There's kind of three core pillars to it. There's the schedule, which is sort of the grouping of live events that happen over the 12th, 13th, 14th. There are the designer pages where you can explore, find out more about the designers, any content that they want to have on there. If you're industry, you'll be able to go to lookbooks and be able to book sales appointments and contact their PR teams. And then there's this explore section, a hybrid of kind of a Netflix for fashion versus iTunes. So there's films, webinars, debates, walkthroughs of collections, podcasts, designer diaries, playlists, opportunities to get involved. And I think that explore section then, of course, is that unlike fashion weeks where it's kind of a moment in real time that then is talked about in the media, is that because we're all at home at the moment, is that you've got this opportunity to explore and learn
Search for
more.
the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.